Welcome everyone. Welcome to the AAAM webinar. This is our webinar, Preservation Through Education Part 2. Not About Us, Without Us. It's a great title. My name is Omar Eaton Martinez. I am the Vice President of the AAAM Board of Directors, and I want to welcome everyone here today. I also wanted to introduce Camille Vincent, AAAM's Special Projects Intern, who is producing this session for us today. Quickly, the description of our program is this is a sequel to what STQRY did with us with AAAM's conference this past summer. It's a part 2 to that. And we're going to hear from the African American Heritage Preservation Foundation founder, Renee Ingram. She'll be joined today with the American Battlefield Trust Chief Digital Officer, Lawrence Swaider, in a discussion facilitated by our partner Genevieve Hauck from STQRY about the creation process behind the Trust Road to Freedom app. The app launched in 2021 of this year, presents stories about the Black experience in the Civil War of Virginia. Renee will discuss her part as a Road to Freedom consultant in the app's development and how her own family history helped shape her need to preserve and educate. Lawrence will address his journey in creating the Road to Freedom app while taking into consideration how to present history in a way that represents and respects the subjects of the history. He'll touch on the creation process and how he goes about building geo-referenced educational tools. And now I want to go over some housekeeping in preparation before I turn it over to Genevieve. So the housekeeping is we definitely want you to engage in the chat, your name and institution, questions and comments. And just to remind everybody to please mute your microphone. We're so excited to have this session with STQRY today, who was a sponsor of 2020 and 2021 AAAM conference. And so now I will turn it over to Genevieve Hauck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. We are really excited to do a part 2 of our presentation that we did part of the conference. So we're going to do it a little bit differently. Normally, if you have seen a presentation with us, it's always in some slide format, and we normally take Q&A a little bit after, but today is actually a panel discussion because I really wanted you to be able to hear from Renee and Larry today about this app, the creation process, but the absolutely wonderful story in terms of how this is created, Larry's thought process behind it, and how Renee came into this project and was really able to facilitate the voice that it needed. So I just want to introduce a little bit about myself. If you have not been on a presentation with me yet, chances are you have, though. We've given quite a few. My name is Genevieve Hauck. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager with STQRY. My background is actually in arts management and administration, specifically in that museum sector, primarily within Europe. I worked at STQRY managing a lot of the arts and cultural clients, and I have now moved over to that marketing role to facilitate discussions like this. I'm going to pass it over to Renee to introduce herself, and then over to Larry, who is going to show you a little bit about the app. And then, like I said, this is a panel discussion and I am your host. So we're going to go through some questions, and this is going to be more of a conversation I'm going to have with them to help this learning process. I'm going to pass over to you, Renee.
Great, thank you, Genevieve, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. And I am honored to be with all of the AAAM members this afternoon. I'm the president and founder of the African American Heritage Preservation Foundation, which was established in 1994 as a result of preserving an endangered family historic cemetery in Buckingham County, Virginia. And so we act as advocates to help mitigate endangered African American sites throughout the US. And I'll explain more as we go along on how my journey had started. And now I'll turn it over to Larry for his introduction.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you, Genevieve, and thanks to AAAM for giving me a spot here to speak to you all about a project I really love. So I'm Larry Swaider. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the American Battlefield Trust, and I've been at the Trust for about 4 years. My background's in instructional design, where at the intersection of technology and education, and I've been working in the museum sector for most of my life, with a brief episode a 10-year episode actually in reproductive health, but for the most part, I've been working in museums. In Greece, I worked at the Holocaust Museum here in Washington for 10 years. And now back to telling stories about American history at the American Battlefield Trust. Let me apologize in advance if any cats hop up onto this table, because for some reason they're always attracted to me when I'm doing some sort of Zoom presentation. So hopefully that they're well fed and that doesn't happen. But if it does, you know why. So this app, this project, is really about a question. You know, have you ever been on the road driving at 45 to 50 miles per hour and noticed a road marker? You're sure it had something interesting to offer about that place, but you can't read it fast enough and you can't stop. Well, this project really is about that question, that experience. It's a curated tour that offers insights into the African-American experience during the Civil War era of Virginia by bringing together the stories of war and the fight for emancipation through battlefields, churches, cemeteries, highway markers, and other historic places. We call it the Road to Freedom. It was created in partnership with Civil War Trails and offers 3 physical and digital manifestations. A map guide is available in visitor centers and distribution sites across the state of Virginia, and an app, which is our focus today. The trail highlights 88 spots across Virginia and is designed to be flexible. Travelers can seek out a single stop, find a destination along an existing journey, or plan an adventure exploring several sites grouped by theme or proximity. The 8 sites in Alexandria, for example, or 7 in Richmond, could all be visited in one day, while finding the 6 included in the Historic Cemeteries collection would cover 434 miles and clock nearly 8 hours of drive time. This program sprang from the notion that place matters, and preservation through memory is a tool of elevation. It brings power to place. And the app began with a map. The digital team was basically asked to consider an app version of the map, which I'll show you right now. And hopefully this all works properly. Let's see here. So this is a map that was created in the ways I just described. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see. It's a 2-sided map. And as you look around this map, you can see spots that are highlighted, points on the map. The obverse side of the map looks like this, where we do some storytelling. And you can see some of the obvious limitations of a physical piece, right? It's fixed, it's permanent. It's, if we make a mistake, we can't really easily correct it without going back to print. But it's a great product. And it's not, even though it's a map here on this side, it's not location aware. It doesn't know where you are at all, of course. So we were faced with the prospect of turning this into an app. And it was a delightful question to get and a nice challenge to get. And this is how it looks. Now, this tour that I'm doing is on my web browser, and one of the nice things actually about the STQRY app or the STQRY platform is that it offers downloadable versions on iPhone and Android, but also a web version, which I'm showing here, but formatted for a phone. So you can more easily appreciate the experience of the app. And it's divided into 3 sections. One that's about the app, another tour collections, like the cemeteries collection that I mentioned, and then the explore section, which I'll click on here, touch on. And when it loads, you can see those 88 stops before you. You can view them that way, or you can turn to the map view of the experience and look at it that way. And this is especially relevant if you are on the road already in Virginia and you want to know what's near you, you can use this button to geolocate yourself and see what's nearby. So I'm going to go back to this for a second. Let's see if it loads for me. Of course, it's not. There we go. And give you a sense of what the app looks like in its most simple form when it comes from the map. So I'm going to choose this Ulrich Farm section. And when I do, you get a picture of a roadside marker, one of those markers we zoom by, and the text from the marker is displayed here on the page. Now this is useful. It has a lot of utility because, as I described in that experience I know I've had, if I go by it and can't stop, I'd love to have the opportunity to read that sign at my leisure, and that's what this does. But it doesn't go any further than that. And what Renee has really helped us do is go beyond this to tell stories of that place and what happened there. And maybe my favorite stop already is the Alfred Street Baptist Church. And actually, if I show you, I can show you what it looks like to drive by that site. It looks like that. That's the marker for the church. And when we brought it, with Renee's help, when we brought it into the app, we get much more. We get an overview of the church, the location of the marker, but here is where Renee helped us so much. We get church history from various periods. We get a picture of the stained glass that's in the building. We get its post-war history. We get other pictures that we can zoom in on if we want to. And what's really impressive to me is that we can listen to what the choir might sound like in the church. So with that, I'm going to stop my tour, and I think I'm passing it back to Genevieve to bring Renee here in on the conversation, because that's exactly the moment where that's appropriate, because it's the best example I know in the app of how we've enhanced it with Renee's help.
Yeah, and to kind of kick off these, this actual panel and the questions of it, one of the main things when we were first brainstorming for this session and we were reviewing the app, you had said something to me, and it's on that title slide, and Omar, you really liked the title. It was, you had said, I had heard something, and that's when I knew like I needed to bring in someone else, and I needed to, look at this as a different type of storytelling. And that was not about us without us. So could you elaborate on that a little bit? And I know you have that short 1-minute video really quickly, just to kind of, I guess, an example of what that really means in terms of this app and the storytelling of it.
Sure. Well, along with our partners at Civil War Trails, we worked on the paper map with a number of constituent groups, from entities that manage individual sites on the trail to agencies that oversee a broader vision of cultural resources, which included Black people who could give us a perspective on a project about Black people. These consultants suggested much of the text and images that went into the physical paper map. So then we knew that when we were building the app, we needed additional consultation from an African-American perspective to make sure the stories were told in the right way. And that's really where Renee comes in, is that I knew I couldn't do that on my own. I couldn't do it with legitimacy, and that I couldn't fully represent and vet the content that was there already told by others as we brought it into the app. And what's even more special about Renee is her personal connection, which I know she'll talk about, to this history. But let me show this video really quickly. It's a 1-minute video, which is the type of content that we are still working on with Renee's help to bring into the app. And I will show that here.
It's a little surreal. Actually, when we pulled up, there was like a heart flutter when we pulled into the driveway up front, which I guess, I don't know, maybe it's him saying, hey, this is where it all began. So. We're here at the Hankins farm. This is where my second great grandfather was a slave.
I can't evaluate what he went through. I can only use my imagination.
My name is Edward Radcliffe, and I'm a gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps.
And I am Damon Radcliffe, sergeant with the York McCosin Sheriff's Office. And we are the great-great-grandsons of Edward Radcliffe, Medal of Honor recipient, Civil War.
And I'll just hold the floor for a moment to say that in the app, where you find those stories is in the Newmarket Heights battlefield section of the app, which I'll get to here, down here. This is another section that looks the way it does because of Renee's work. And as you scroll down, you can see the name Edward Radcliffe here, and that's the ancestor those two men were talking about.
And moving on to like the consulting portion, Renee, when you first came into this project, when Larry first brought you on, what were your initial thoughts and how were you kind of like, let's tackle it this way?
Thank you, Genevieve. Well, I was just really very excited about the opportunity to research several of these historic sites because they're generally not known in American history. They're not in the mainstream. They're not usually taught in the public school systems. And even in college, if you're taking American history or African-American studies, many of these sites may not be typically known in our research. So our board members have engaged in this project very extensively, as well as Howard University School of Architecture and Design, and through their network to ensure that we have a robust story to tell about these various sites with the American Battlefield Trust. Some of the sites that we have already researched, it was really rewarding to find connections with descendants, such as the two Radcliffe brothers there. I actually had created a family tree trying to locate descendants. And fortunately, their mother reached out to me and I was able to connect with them, and the filming that was conducted by the American Battlefield Trust just brought everything to light. So interacting with descendants has been very rewarding. We have also been very fortunate to interview Booker T. Washington's senior great-grandson as part of this bringing to light the aspects of the Road to Freedom mobile app. So I am just really thrilled to work on it. Our board is also very thrilled to work on it. And each day we're bringing more people into the fold in terms of telling their stories about these historic sites throughout Virginia.
Okay, it seems like the Wi-Fi cut out. Okay, perfect. And I think that that is probably the point that we do want to show a little snippet of the Booker T. Washington video. That is, you did say yesterday you are working on getting it into the app. It needs maybe a little editing, but this is going to be a big component in terms of this storytelling. Like we said, the title, Not About Us Without Us. It sounds like, Renee, when you came into this project, you knew immediately, we need some firsthand accounts. We need to talk to people. We need to talk to, descendants and really understand how this has affected people. And like you said, put power to the place, Larry, really, and that's what you're doing through these interviews. So I am gonna show a little snippet of that video as well, and just move this over. Alrighty.
Who was in connection with Tuskegee. And I think the first
Genevieve, we've lost the audio.
And you're muted too now, Genevieve.
coming up from slavery,
Okay, can you
hear
it now?
Yes.
Okay, forgot to click that one button. All right, we're starting it right now.
Renee, and really look at it very carefully, is how did he see himself in relationship to accepting a leadership role for Black people in terms of our coming up from slavery? He, having been born a slave himself, even though he was somewhat of a privileged slave because his mother was a plantation cook on the Burroughs farm, or plantation as some people like to call it. And he was trained as a houseboy because his mother arranged for him to work in the quote unquote big house as a child. And later, when they went to Malden, she got him a job working as a houseboy in the home of the major industrial icon in Malden. But he always had a desire, from what he says in his book, to see our people receive an education. But also he developed the concept that we as a people needed to build a firm foundation so that we could enjoy an economic life that would be able to give us food, clothing, and shelter and respectability in our communities. And so his basic concept that he learned initially under General Armstrong at Hampton was that the foundation for people like we were just coming out of slavery needed to start with taking care of our basic needs. And so he used the term that was popular at that time, industrial education. Now you hear terms like career education, vocational education, and even things like life skills education. But he just wanted to prepare us to be accepted as members of the free body politic who were in a position to take care of ourselves, to manage our own lives, because we did not have to do that in slavery.
And I don't mind, Elise, if I start to get energetic and excited about what Mrs. Barber is going to tell me. Just move me back. Just put your hands on my shoulder. Put your hands on my shoulder. I don't mind. Okay. All righty. Well, Mrs. Barber, it is great to see you again.
Nice seeing you.
I haven't seen you in so long. And let me tell you, I remember.
Neil, do you have the ability to?
All that you used.
And Renee, after watching that video, my one question, just in terms of the connections that you've been able to make, I guess, what was the most what is, since you spoke, is the most rewarding and yet difficult part of consulting on this project?
Well, the most rewarding has actually been connecting with descendants and working with church historians, reconnecting with some of my old friends that are curators in various museums that are part of this trail, and also meeting genealogists that have a different perspective on some of these sites that may not have been heard of before. I think the most difficult part of consulting on this particular project is that because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to go into many of the repositories to actually access documents that are relevant to these sites and individuals. And so that has been really the major challenge. I don't know when we're going to open up the Library of Congress and the National Archives again for accessibility, but I do have a list of resources that when they do open up again that I'll be able to go into. And of course, visiting the Library of Virginia and some of the other historical societies in Virginia that may be able to shed additional light on these sites. So that's been the most challenging.
It's long been on our list, Renee, right? To
Yes,
get into
absolutely.
the Alfred Street Baptist Church to
Right.
get pictures of the stained glass. And we haven't been
Exactly.
able to do that.
Exactly. So even the churches are still not open to the general public, as well as their archival materials. So that's another area that has been challenging. I think what we have been able to do aside from that is find a lot of digitized documents, including maps and photographs that we have been able to incorporate into this project. And so what we did was we created a PowerPoint presentation for each of the sites that we have been able to research. And our team, along with Larry's team, we go through very thoroughly each of the sites that we have conducted research on and share and collaborate, what we think may work best with a particular site. So those could be the voices that you've already heard. It could be photographs, handwritten letters of individuals that we have researched, and the mapping and getting others to tell their stories. Most recently, we had a professional genealogist, Shar McCargo Barr, who is from Alexandria, Virginia, and she and I talked extensively about the Friedman Cemetery on Washington Street there, and her personal connection of documenting and finding descendants of those that are interred there. And that was a fascinating interview. And I know there are other people on this call that I would love to interview for their engagement with several other sites that we plan to research.
All right. And before we get into some questions about the actual, digital experience side in terms of the software and the features, and Larry, how you chose to do it this way and how you chose the story platform, just to kind of give everyone background knowledge on that. My question, I guess, for both of you is, Renee, obviously this plays a part because you also have your own app, which is African American Sites that people can use, which is also helping preserve and gain attention for these actual sites. And within the Road to Freedom app, there is Friedman Cemetery, which you said not many people know about at all. But I mean, even with the markers, those roadside markers, it's very hard to find. And luckily, with an app like this, you do have the geo alerts set up so people get notifications and they can locate those types of things a lot easier. But now, looking at the project, and this is a question for both of you before we go into this more of the software side of things, what do you see now for this app? I mean, expansion wise and future wise, what are you looking at for this type of digital experience and what it's going to look like?
Well,
Renee, do you want to go first?
Sure. For me, I think just telling these stories and bringing a voice to them, to these historic sites, I think is really crucial. As I mentioned before, that a lot of these sites are not generally known, are not in mainstream American history, and it is American history. And I can't emphasize that more so. But to have voices and to have documents to showcase those that were honored by, they were Medal of Honor recipients, to showcase their records. And some of them have been digitized and we've incorporated those into our presentations. And Larry will decide how to actually design those within the app so people can actually see the records of those individuals that participated, along with the video that he showed you of the Radcliffe brothers. So I think that is really important. So you just don't see the signage, but really bringing these sites to life. There's others like Emancipation Oak and Mary S. Peak, who was an educator and activist in the Civil War period. And so her story will be told from a scholar who has actually researched extensively her life. And so we're going to be pleased to add that. There's also Friedman's Village, an author that through our network has written a book 2 years ago about Friedman's Village and finding documentation about what the village once looked like and having that description. So when somebody goes to the National Arlington Cemetery, they'll have an understanding of what Friedman's Village was actually like during that period of time.
I would say, I only had a tangential knowledge, if that, of the Emancipation Oak before this project. And that sort of underscores why, just speaking very personally, why I needed Renee. Because now, after collaborating on that stop, to me, it's one of the greatest symbols of freedom and America and promise that we have. I mean, I think everybody should make a pilgrimage to the Emancipation Oak and see it once in their lifetimes. And I think that as we move forward, that's the one category that I think we just need to do more of that, more unpacking of these stops. I think there's another category that Renee's hit upon. And again, we didn't go into this, I think from the beginning, correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, thinking that, oh, it will interview ancestors, but that's come about during the process. And I think that's really powerful
Right,
to
that
hear
really
from,
evolved.
to hear from a descendant of Booker T. Washington, to me is super powerful. So that's another category. I want to do more of that. And going into this from the beginning, we imagined also taking perspectives on this history that might be a bit of a different angle than straight on, history telling the story. For example, from an art and architecture standpoint, which you can do when you're talking about Friedman's Village or the church that we were talking about. There are architectural aspects of that, decisions that were made by Black people that we need to know about that can go into this app. And we imagined that at the beginning. I think we were kind of thwarted in our ability to do some of that because of the pandemic, but I think that I definitely want to do more. One other thing, Genevieve, I think I wanted to say before I lose the thought, as Renee was talking about the interviews that we're doing in the slideshows that she puts together. When she puts those together, we have at least an hour-long discussion, usually a couple hours, about all of that content with Renee. And we have an opportunity to discuss it. Through those discussions, we often imagine more. And also what Renee delivers still in those decks still needs some processing on our end, in that there's so much there. We do have to cull it for the experience in the app. So I think that's still something that's ongoing, where we think about what's the experience that people need to have when they have the app in their hand, they're near a place, versus what could they then do when they're sitting in the comfort of their homes, reading at their leisure. So there's a bit of like the interview that we saw with Booker T. Washington's senior great grandson is that full interview is probably not something you're going to watch while you're on the road, but it might be something you do when you get home. And so how does that relationship work? And I think those are things that we're still figuring out.
Sure. It's part of the process. And Genevieve, can you pull up the sample presentations that Larry, just to give you an idea that when we do complete a particular site for review with Larry's team, I just wanted to show some of the sites that we have already discussed, starting with Friedman Cemetery. And as you go through, we wanted to make sure we showcase the diversity of these different sites. So you're looking at Booker T. Washington's birthplace. So we'll incorporate his great-grandson's perspective. We have the Louverture Hospital in Arlington, Virginia, which we did find a map, and that map can be interpreted by a student from Howard University School of Architecture and Design, and what his perspective or her perspective is on that particular plot. We also have Highbridge, which is personal to me because as I was researching my own family history in Buckingham County, Virginia, I did find out that they were free Blacks who were actually drafted during the Civil War by the Confederate Army and were laborers on the fortification at Highbridge. And so this was very personal to me. So I was very pleased to see that this particular site was going to be part of the Road to Freedom mobile app. So I've provided some documentation that I've been able to find with regard to that particular site. Unfortunately, our family did not have documentation with regard to those who served, but we do know there were at least 3 ancestors that were served and paid for their service on that fortification. So that was a little known history that came to light about 20 years ago. And I was so pleased to share that with my family as I researched their work and their livelihood in Buckingham County, Virginia.
Now, just to go into the actual app software, but digital experience portion, and we understand that this is like, you know, taking that map and making it a tour, but again, anything like this can really be created for museums or a cultural site, anything where self-guided touring is involved. But really the main aspect here that we want to get across today is that aspect of storytelling and how powerful it can be and how you can do it in various different ways. You know, there you have that map and you guys had that before, and then you did some storytelling on the back of that. And it was like, you know, something you could print out and that you could have in your hand. But then there's also a way of delivering that to people's phones and in the palm of their hand immediately and allowing them to learn at their own pace. And then you can hear that quiet at the church. So I guess moving on to the actual software portion, and Renee, you also have an app with us, so don't, you know, feel free to chime in. But Larry, when you were starting the project and looking at different types of softwares and different types of digital experiences, what were your, you know, deal breakers, or what made you kind of go, you know, this is the platform, this has the features that we need?
Well, honestly, I always worry when someone comes to me and says, I want an app. It always worries me. And I challenge them and I ask, how do you know? Because often people don't let the need emerge naturally, organically. Mm. This one was a little bit easier to tell that an app would be appropriate, given the map and the geolocated information. And that's something that we know that app technology does quite well. And it's a great match for our organization to let people know what happened where they are. We've had, I think by the time we were considering this app, we had built 20 apps already at the organization. And we have a basically mama bear, papa bear, baby bear kind of an approach to app building, where Papa Bear, the most expensive, is something that we do when we have to create something that's completely bespoke. So the needs for the app, maybe augmented reality, for example, is something that we've done recently that called for a bespoke app that we had to create. Mama Bear is something in between where we've used other platforms in the past for something that that made sense, that had a functionality in that platform that made sense for us and that we would pay for. The downside of those kinds of platforms are it doesn't have the ease of access that I think the Story platform has. And I call Story platform Baby Bear here, but I call it that only in terms of cost, honestly, not in terms of potential. It's often a low barrier of entry in terms of cost for an organization to get into, but high value and access. And a lot, those other two forms are really difficult to work with in the way we're working now with Renee, for example, where Renee is giving us information to update, and we're going in on our own into the app platform, the content management system behind Story, to update those files. And that is the game changer for me, and why Story was the absolute easy choice on this one, because we knew we needed to take this approach, that we weren't just going to take the map and put it into an app and then forget about it and it's done forever. And no app is done forever, by the way. But rather, we were going to take this approach, right, and iterate. And so that's why Story made sense.
And I agree with you, Larry, wholeheartedly, because African American Sites is on the Story platform. So we are able to control the content, update it. When people are actually using the platform, they may say, oh, you may want to include additional information about this particular site or this museum, or, you know, even an email may have been updated. So we can easily go into the platform and document and update material.
I will say that as an example, in some of our other apps where we have information about parks, national parks, sometimes those phone numbers change or hours of operation change. It's really difficult for us to update some of those things because we can't do it on our own. So to your point.
Right. And yeah, we do hear that a lot, is owning your content and not having to contact custom developers and kind of go through that whole process of going back and forth between them, and being able to update that yourselves is really important. And it speaks to kind of what you had said earlier, is when you first started this process, you never thought you were going to be interviewing, you know, the great grandson of Booker T. Washington. It was, you know, once you start this process and once you see the potential in the storytelling and what can be done, you kind of, you know, it has that snowball effect, and all of a sudden now you have so much more information you want to add. And Renee, you had mentioned, you know, being able to get feedback and make changes. That feedback is also really important, and not just for, you know, the Story platform, and not just for apps, but for digital experiences in general when tackling those. For example, museums, they have temporary exhibitions that come and go, and being able to update something like that, or update a digital experience so that you can add and take away that, or, you know, seasonal tours, etc. That's incredibly important as well.
One other thing, Genevieve, if I may, the collections functionality in the Story app was another aspect that drew our attention and our helped make our decision about this. Because how does a person who knows nothing about this history enter that history without the proximity of place, without place mattering? So collections is the answer to that. Is we could then pull various points into thematic stories that are connected. So like cemeteries, for example, and we're not done with those. We want to do more. But that helps people get a sense of what's there and what it's about, and maybe find hooks with certain people that might attract them to the content. Like someone who's going to spend the weekend in Alexandria, you could do the stops in that small area, and you know, have a really informative and delightful day.
And with saying that as well, you know, not being able to, you know, having that theme that's kind of all together. So would you say that this app is something that can also be used as an educational tool offsite as well? Maybe if you're not even if you're standing next to those markers, is it something that, let's say, someone where I'm in New York could just pick up and say, like you said, Renee, this isn't always something that's taught in schools. This isn't something that's taught in history classes right now. So could someone pick up this app and go through it and learn on their own and use it as an additional resource?
I would say absolutely, on both of our platforms with ABT's app and also African American sites. And that's really how our foundation viewed this particular mobile app, is to make it a learning experience for any age group. And that within the summaries of each of these sites that we have on our platform, that you can actually go in and there's a link there to each of the sites, where some of them actually have virtual educational tours. Museums, we have about 400 of them on the site, and you can actually take tours of the exhibits that they currently have on display. And it's also a good way to share experiences with curators or managers of museums that, gee, you have an exhibit that we would love to have come to our community. And so there are ways that you can engage others with these types of platforms and have a dialogue and, share experiences.
Yeah, and I think that having that additional resource, and I know that you'd been trying to get African American Sites app, and you were talking with schools, etc., and really trying to get other people to use it, off these sites as well. I think that it can be, a powerful remote learning tool. Absolutely. I guess we don't have that much more time left. So before we open it up to Q&A and let anyone else ask questions that I maybe haven't asked yet, I guess what advice would you give anyone, maybe not even trying to do an app, but just ready to launch a digital experience, trying to digitize something that hasn't been digitized yet? What advice would either of you have for someone looking to do that, and kind of how they would go about that, or what they should look out for?
Well, our foundation had been thinking about this app for several years, and really it was cost prohibitive, 10 years ago, to try to put together an app such as we have created. Initially, we had thought about just showcasing endangered African American historic sites throughout the country, since that was how the foundation was established. And at that time, we just weren't able to afford it. We're a small organization. So ironically, the pandemic actually provided us the opportunity to focus on the app and expand what it would entail. And that included museums, military sites, national historic landmarks, and national register sites, along with the endangered sites. So our platform now has evolved into over 1,700 sites throughout the country. And as I indicated before, that we're hoping that it can be used as a learning tool. People that are planning trips, whether they're business trips or vacations, that they will be able to utilize the app that will showcase various sites throughout the country, and become a learning and educational tool, and encourage them to go to these sites as well.
From my perspective, I would say first, make sure you need an app. So ask that question of yourself. How do I know an app is the thing that I need to solve the problem I'm seeking to solve or address the issue I want to address? And then beyond that, I think take advantage of the effort that goes into creating an app. Know in advance that it's going to be an effort, and that your best friend on this is the content creator. So for me, that's Renee. And that, you need to have good content, well-written content, or you may as well not do it. And think about the medium, that it has to be formatted well for that medium. And I think that I like to say with my team, there's a mantra I have, and that's called, I say, create once and produce everywhere. And what that means is that take advantage of the effort that goes into that by not necessarily creating walls up around the content on your app, but think about how it might manifest itself on your website, on your YouTube channel, and your social media networks. Take advantage of that content and that effort you're putting into that content to get it into other places. And that helps you, it's kind of an organic form of marketing. It helps you shout out the app as well.
Okay, and I think at this point, we are going to open up for the next few minutes to anyone else who has any questions that I may not have asked. I might have asked them all, so if you don't have any questions, no worries. And I am gonna also put Renee and Larry's email in the chat. That way we can you can, if you have questions for them separately, that's really fine. I'll put mine in here as well. If you are interested in an app experience or a digital experience, feel free to email me and I can always pass your information along to someone who can talk to you as well. We do have a few questions. So Larry, does the app incorporate indoor wayfinding? And then the other question is, does the app have any aspects of gamification like scavenger hunts?
Well, Genevieve, that might be a better thing for you to address actually in terms of the capacity, capabilities of the platform. And then I can chime in if you like.
Yeah, so the Road to Freedom app, I know that it has all the geofencing, but it has no indoor wayfinding app, unless you want to start doing that when you can get into places and go into the church and stuff. But the capabilities of the Story platform, if Larry or Renee did want to do indoor wayfinding 100%, actually, I would say that's what we actually specialize in, specifically with museums and cultural organizations. And then does the app have any aspects of gamification like scavenger hunts? We do have a platform that you can do scavenger hunts on and you can do quizzes. And right now, some of our goals, we discussed some of our company goals for 2022, and we are trying to get those features over on our new platform, which is the platform that Larry and Renee are on. And that is going to have badges for scavenger hunts. And we are getting quizzes soon because everyone loves having that quiz function, especially if you are using this as an additional resources specifically to engage with younger age groups or kind of break into schools. We do have some apps that already do that. So if gamification and indoor wayfinding is something you're interested in, all of our platforms do that, no problem. I'll put my email in the chat and you can just message me just even for a discovery meeting, no problem.
Erin, to your question, I would say about gamification, it's definitely something we're interested in. We haven't done it yet. One of the nice things about working in a platform like Story is that when they roll out a functionality like quizzes, it's there for you. Actually, I see that quiz function, I think it launched maybe this week inside the interface that I'm looking at, and I'm already thinking about how I can use it. Badging is something else that we're thinking about using, and I'm not sure we're going to use it on this app first, but we're working on another app called the Liberty Trail in the Story platform that is about the Revolutionary War in South Carolina. And we think we want to use badges in that to get people, to give people a little bit more incentive to go from one site to the next. And then also it kind of works, I think, this is a theory, I haven't proved it yet, but it kind of works, I think, as a bookmark, so, okay, I know I'm a completionist. I love to do everything on a tour, So I think that it might help us remind people that there's still something left to do.
Great, and that's something we can explore with you, Genevieve, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely incorporate that into the apps anytime.
Hey, Genevieve, one other thing I might add, this might be of interest to certain people, is that we're not doing this yet on the Road to Freedom app, but, well, two things come to mind, actually, just tips. We are incorporating augmented reality into our Liberty Trail app. And I just want to let you all know that that's way more accessible to start doing than it used to be. And the way we're doing it through the app is a way that doesn't add to the download, the weight of the download, the size of the download. So it doesn't prevent people from having a quick download experience or seeing a big download and not wanting to do it. So we just do it through a link in the app. And we're using a network called Eighth Wall to deliver these augmented reality experiences. And we've tested it in our Liberty Trail app and it works quite well. So that's one thing. And the other is that we are, with regard to video, like the video that Renee showed, we're testing both kinds of experiences where one is embedded in the app and another where we link out. Obviously, there are pros and cons to both. If it's embedded, you can get people to download the tour in advance, and it, irrespective of the connectivity at that location, you can still watch it, but you have to download it in advance. And it does add to the bulk of the size of the app. If you link out, then you're not adding to the bulk of the size of the app, but you need connectivity to watch it. So those are some things to watch out for. There are pros and cons to each. Connectivity is still an issue in certain places, like definitely for us in South Carolina, and in certain places on the road to freedom, on that tour across Virginia. But I just wanted to relay some of my experience there working with the app. I don't think we figured it out, but that's a little bit of what we've done so far.
Yeah, and the connectivity is incredibly important, especially in museums. Sometimes it can be a little spotty as well.
Mhm.
All right, I think that is all the time we have for today. Again, I put everyone's emails in the chat, so if you have any questions for Larry, Renee, or I, feel free to email. We're always open to answering any and all questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and Omar, thank you so much for coming on and allowing us to kind of present to everyone. Renee and Larry, thank you so much for your expertise and just kind of giving us a little bit of your insights into these types of digital experiences.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Story. Thanks again, Genevieve, Lawrence, and Renee. It was amazing, the stories that were shared and the type of access and interactivity that this project has allowed our public to experience. And hopefully we continue to build on this work across our museums. I wanted to make sure that I thanked everyone who took the time to attend. We did record the session, so the session will be made available in the very near future, so you can continue to watch it and rewatch it as needed. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Vedette Coleman Robinson, our fearless leader, our executive director, sends her love. Please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. She did lose a loved one recently, and so we just want to make sure that people understood why she wasn't here. She loves Story and she loves the projects that you guys produce. And so I just wanted to make sure I relay that message. So thanks everybody for coming and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.